Good evening, everyone. It's Duncan Byron here, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day. As always, I'm extremely excited to be able to introduce our speaker tonight. We've got another absolute heavyweight of the property industry. We've got Jim Halberton, also known as the HMO Daddy. Jim is a private landlord with a £10 million plus empire of over 100 HMOs. That's 100 HMOs, which, if you're new to it, this is the houses of multiple occupation. He has over 800 tenants. He's the author of several books, including How to Become a Multi-Millionaire HMO Landlord, and he is considered the industry expert on the subject, and is thus turned to by the media regularly, appearing in both newspapers and on television. His other passion is teaching and sharing his knowledge and experience in helping others to achieve their own success. And that is why he's on this call tonight. So it is my great pleasure to be able to introduce you all to the HMO Daddy himself. It's Jim Halberton. Jim, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us on this call tonight.
Great. Thanks, Duncan. It's a great pleasure I'm here tonight. I enjoy it very much, and thanks very much for inviting us. I'm looking forward to talking to you there, and also answering any questions. That keeps me going, and I find that quite exciting. So I'm going to talk about what I love to do, which is property, and talking about property. So this is a great pleasure to be able to do this. We're going to give you some information about what I do, and sorry, the slides are a little bit out of order here, so I'm just going to quickly flick them through so they are a quick preview of what I'm going to be talking about for you. Right, we're here. So, HMO Daddy. I'm talking about how I acquired 20 properties, grossing 30k, and I've forgotten how much millions of pounds worth of assets there were, but it's probably about £3 million. And I did this without a penny of money. For those who don't know about me, though Duncan has given a bit of an introduction, I've been doing HMOs since 1991. I've got now well over 100 HMOs, plus over 20 I've done on rent-to-rent. I've currently this year bought 6 HMOs, and I've got another 5 in the pipeline to purchase. So it's all good fun, and the easy part I find is getting hold of properties, whether you buy them or you get them for nothing. I also, because I used to be a college lecturer, I love the sort of technical side of it, the theory behind it all. So I like writing about it, I like talking about it, I like challenging other people's views on how they do things. You'll find mine are very different, because this whole business started not from a theory, but from doing it. And then we're trying to put some kind of theory around what you do, producing the rules. But I try and make it as practical as possible and base it on my own understanding and experience. So do bear in mind, my experience is based on being in the West Midlands. I'm north of Birmingham, south of Wolverhampton, as they say, west of Walsall and east of Dudley. It's an area that is, most people wouldn't even know as an area. My first book I wrote on the subject, which is the leading manual on the subject, it's not a book, it's a manual. It's called How to Become a Multi-Millionaire HMO Landlord, and it'll take you about an hour, 7 hours to read. In other words, for an hour a day, you can learn all I know about being about being an HMO landlord. I've also got written an operating standards. That's a bit like a guide to how to run the business. So the operating standards I give my staff, that tells them what they do in any particular situation in the business that I have. I've also evicted over 300 tenants through the courts, and when I got to about 50, I wrote my DIY eviction manual, which makes it very simple, A, B, C, D, to evict tenants through the court system. There's no reason why you should be frightened of the court system. It's simple and plain there. Plus, I've also written a book on planning in HMOs, the rules of being an HMO landlord. It's now 35 money saving and making tips for HMO landlords. A case book on unlawful eviction, because there's very little information about that. A lot of landlords don't, HMO landlords do not understand that you get into serious trouble for evicting tenants, and I'm in the process of just getting a book called Tales from a Landlord. So I think I've renamed that, and I think I'm calling it now HMO Daddy Reveals All. So lots of it. I should, as I said before, point out that I talk not theory. This is real life, and I try and put some kind of rules around what I've found from my experience of doing it over 20 years. Also, I tend to be a bit near to the knuckle. People find the truth sometimes unpleasant, so I'll be careful how I'm, because I don't know how you are out there, so I don't want to offend anyone, but sometimes the facts and what goes on is a bit, some people find it a bit offensive. So I do apologize if I do offend anyone. So anyway, let's start with the basics. What is an HMO? Just in case you haven't heard of it before, it stands for Housing and Multiple Occupation, sometimes referred to as multi-lets. Other people call them shared houses. What a lot of them don't realize is whatever you call it, it all comes down to being a house and multiple occupation, whether you like it or not. It's where you have three, that's 1, 2, 3 unrelated people. It's not 5. A lot of people get muddled up between licensing and HMOs. An HMO is anything that has 3 people. And by the way, the rules that apply to an HMO with 3 is the same rules that applies to an HMO with 5 or 10 or 20. It's not somehow you're exempt the rules if it's below 5. It's very much the same law. Sometimes the fire safety standards are a bit stricter when you have more people in the property, but it's the same thing. So this is one of the starting absurdities of the business. If you take the picture, you've got 4 nurses there. Are they in danger of any harm through the property? Probably not. Well, you've got a family, vulnerable family. If there's going to be a fire, is it nurses who die in fires and HMOs, or is it families and houses? Who are more likely to be affected by the problems with the property? It's going to be families. Yet the government has put a lot of expenditure into protecting people like the 4 nurses you've got there. People who live in HMOs, saying they are in need of protection. Yet, where's the stats to back that up, to show that people in HMOs are far greater risk? It is not the property that's the problem, it's the kind of people. As I say, you put a vulnerable family in Buckingham Palace, they'll burn it down. It's not the property. Some of the myths about HMOs, let's move on. All HMOs need licenses. That's not correct. Apart from a few areas in the country, and we're talking about less than 5%, to be able to have to license a property, it has to be a property which is 3 or more stories and 5 or more tenants and share a kitchen or bathroom. You have to have all 3 conditions applying. So if it's only 2 stories and you have 20 tenants, it's not licensable, daft as it may seem. Unless you're in an area of selective or additional licensing, then you will have to license the property. But selective licensing, by the way, I say applies to very few areas, and it's areas where all rented property, the landlords have to license them. Additional licensing says all HMOs have to be licensed in a particular area. So an HMO is one with, yes, you've got it, 3 people in it. So you'd have to license that. There's a lot of hang-ups about licensing. I find it quite frustrating. People say, I don't want to license my property. Why? Well, you've got to fill in a form and you've got to pay a license fee. I accept the license fee can range from very little to over £1,500, but most licenses last for 5 years, and if you divide that amongst the number of tenants you have, it's less than £1 a week per tenant. Still unfair to have to pay it, but there is no real problem with licensing. As long as you apply for the license when you get 5 or more tenancies. You don't have to have the license before you let the property. You just have to apply for the license once you've got 5 tenants. So you start off with a 10-bed HMO, which is 3 stories. Then you license it when you get to your 5th tenant. Just make sure you've got it filled in, ready to go. Pop down the local authority, drop in the license application with a fee. Make sure you get a receipt to prove you've applied for the license, and then it's up to them. All the licenses I've applied for have taken over a year to be issued. So better still, you're in effect getting 6 years for the price of 5. Won't catch on the supermarkets, but it will catch on, I think, with a few of the landlords who see the sense in it. There's a lot more regulations involved in setting up an HMO. I'd accept that. It'll probably take you about half a day to a day to learn about them. There's 14 main rules you have to apply to HMOs over and above what would apply to single lets. How long does it take you to learn 14 different rules? Yes, it'll cost you money to implement them. Sorry about that, but it does take a form of a cost. I look upon it as a tax for being an HMO landlord. But if you're making the money, you're left with the rest of it. That's good. Another popular myth is HMOs take a lot of time. Well, the time an HMO takes really is based on two things. One, the type of tenants, and not being rude about them, but DSS, that's the unemployed tenants, tend to take a lot more work than professional tenants, because you've got the bureaucracy involved, and often they need a lot more care than professionals who take care of themselves. And the other factor is travelling. An HMO let to professionals is very much let and forget. They will take care of the property themselves. They'll let you know if there's any problems, so it won't take you very much at all. I say, even for my unemployed tenants, it takes less than 2 hours per week to run the HMO. And I know this because I employ staff to look after the properties, and I monitor the time it takes them to go around checking and managing the properties. And I assure you, it's nothing like even an hour a week, even though you have DSS tenants. And by the way, I have about 70% DSS, that's unemployed. So that leaves me 30% working or professional. So I've got about more working tenants or professional tenants than most people have in total as tenants. What's 30% of 800? My maths are slow. It's about 240, isn't it? Tenants in working or professional. And I assure you, it doesn't take that much time to do this. I've also got about 30 single lets, and they take hardly any time at all. People get very stressed about looking after tenants. To me, it's one of the pleasures of being a landlord. It's like having children. It's all right saying you had a child, but the pleasure is in bringing them up and looking after them. Or a dog, the same thing. You don't get a dog and stick it in kennels and say, oh, I've got a dog, but I never go and see it, never look at it, and never have anything to do with it. It's stupid, isn't it? I think about an HMO as a baby, except if you have a baby, it will grow up and leave you. Oh, how sad. And generally still want money. While an HMO will grow an income and make you rich. If you take my first HMO, I bought it in 1991, and there lies a tale. I bought that because I was a college lecturer. The college was struggling for accommodation for the students, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. I didn't realize just how easy it was for me. I didn't have to research areas, market types, all that kind of stuff. All I had to do was go and have a word with the lettings officer at the college, and she told me exactly what was needed to be done. This is what it is. This is what you charge. In the student market, the rents are very much fixed. And hey-ho, I went the way I went. That property cost me $35,000 in 1991, and even then I got a bargain. I didn't start off paying full price. The property was originally on the market for $45,000, so I've got what, a 25% deduction on the property. And the reason I got that massive reduction is because it's got no garden. Go around the back, there's hardly room to put the dustbins out the back. There's no garden with the property. And what do families want? They want properties with a garden, and usually parking space. So here's one little example. You can get properties that are not popular with families and turn them into HMOs, because do HMO tenants want a garden? No. You may think they would, but I assure you, gardens for my HMO tenants, from the experience over 100 HMOs, I've got 20 years experience, I've only had 2 tenants who showed any interest in gardening. So if there's any keen gardeners out there, I've got about 40 gardens belonging to my HMOs which go unloved. So if you want to do a bit of gardening north of Birmingham, here, I don't have to pay for allotment. You can have my garden free of charge. It cost me, I say, $35,000 in 1991, And in 1992, when I did my tax returns, I made, well, it was about 93, made £3,000 profit. I think that was pretty well nearly a third of my income at the time. I think as a college lecturer I was on about £6,000 or £9,000 a year. And I looked at that and I thought 3 of those I could replace my full-time salary. I didn't think that way, by the way. I just thought if I get 10 of these, I'm going to be rich. And I'll have a lovely job lecturing, because I love lecturing. As you can probably gather, you can't shut me up. I love talking about the business and love talking about that. Anyway, here's the more bigger surprise. Bought it for 35k. Its value today, well, it was, let me go back to 2007, but it's getting back to this figure, was 350k. I've got a valuation of 2007 showing it at 350k. This is a bit odd though. The valuation is a commercial valuation, sometimes referred to as an investment valuation. It's not the bricks and mortar. That property is a house, is probably only worth 140,000. But you can value HMOs on its income. It's quite simple. You just multiply the income. In my area, it's about 7 to 8 times the gross rent. Though when this was valued, it was about 10 times. You find that these things tend to go up and down. So the gross income on this property now is 36,000. I've refurbished it twice, so it didn't sort of gradually increase over the years. I had to put a bit of effort into it, but you're getting a massive. I'm earning more out of this property than it cost me back in '91, and I did that in less than 20 years. Quite incredible, isn't it, that you can grow the property and it makes that kind of income over a period of time. But you'll find it. I can't conceive it. I haven't got the imagination to believe that in 20 years' time, what will that property be making? It's worth 140 if I turned it into an HMO. It'll be making, what's that? My brain's gone to sleep. 1.4 million? Yeah, 10 times its purchase price will be 1.4 million in 20 years' time. Can't conceive it. But that has been the pattern. If you go and talk to some of these old people, I won't say old people, better not be careful about that, but you go and talk to people who've had property, HMOs, for 40 years or 50 years, and ask them what they paid for the property and what their income is, what income they're making from the property. You'll probably have to buy them a few drinks, by the way, to get them to give that information, because they'll think you're from the inland revenue. You'll find the pattern comes out. Every 20 years, you'll find that the purchase price of the property that you turn into an HMO will equal the income that you're getting that year. And the property will go up at least 10 times in its value, purchase price, over 20 years as well. It's phenomenal return. So if you look at that, not only are you going to get a good income from the property, but it's going to make a good pension pot. How much time would you give to that property? And remember what I said about time. To run that property will take you less than an hour a week once you've got it up and going. Less than an hour a week. So if you only want a 20-hour week, you could do 20 of these properties. Imagine the income you could get from doing that. And there's lots of other benefits you have. So all this myths about HMOs, I think, are put out by those who don't want you to be an HMO landlord. I'm one of the exceptions. It's probably daft, really, because what I'm doing is creating competition for myself. Why should I share this? Don't know. Need probably a little bit of psychological help on that part. So running an HMO is not as bad as it's made out to be by people who put the bad news out about it. Let's have a look about what HMOs can do for you then. Are you all still awake? Go on, I can't hear you. Give me a shout. Say hello, Jim. Can you hear me? That's it. Jump up and down. Yeah, one of you is awake. Great. So, what do you need? I suggest most people want an income of about 3 to 5 grand per month. So, if you have 5 HMOs in my area, that'll generate, set it up right, by the way, you'll generate about 5 grand a month. If you want 10 grand a month, which is 120k a year, you need 10 HMOs. Not necessarily. I'm just taking an average, but most ordinary houses, 3-bedroom houses that you turn into an HMO, if you do it right, will generate about £1,000 profit. I'm talking about profit. I'm not talking about gross rental take. That's different. Gross rent is the amount of rent you're receiving, but you've got to take off expenses out of that. So that's the kind of return. And as I say, 5 properties, 5-hour working week. Gives you plenty of time to go and get some more properties or do what your passion is, which in my case is getting more properties. There we are. The other great thing about property, especially with houses, is they will go up in value. Everyone knows that a property, on average, in this country, doubles every 10 years. So you're getting, it's not quite a 10% capital appreciation on a property. In London, last year, I believe they went up 20%. So if you get 5 properties, in my area, north of Birmingham, a 3-bedroom terraced house in pretty poor condition, and that's what you want. You want properties that are cheap. Why? Because you get a better return from them. You don't look for properties that are just cheap. It's just best having cheaper properties, and also no one's going to miss them. The nicer properties are a bit more expensive, and you're competing with first-time buyers or second-time buyers, and some people think that's bad. So you can leave the good properties to them. Just get hold of the grotty ones, turn them into an HMO. 5 properties, 100 grand each. That's £500,000 for the property. In 10 years, that'll be worth £1 million. In 20 years, it'd be worth £2 million or thereabout. You could retire on that, could you not? £2 million pot. Even if you had an interest-only mortgage, which is very hard to get nowadays, you still have £1.5 million. That is how many times bigger than, I've got my maths here. Let me get my calculator. The average pension pot is somewhere in the region of £30,000. So if you've got a pot of £1.5 million, that is going to be, I'm just doing the calculations here now, that is going to be 50 times bigger than someone's average pension pot. And by the way, you can get that tax-free. Ah, but you say, what about capital gains tax? Well, if you ask anyone what they're going to do if they had a big chunk of money, you'll find that 90% of people will say the same thing. I want to travel. What's wrong with England? I mean, not in England either. They're thinking they're going to go off to some exotic, warm climates and all the rest of it. Right, let's turn that on your head. If you had 6 months holiday a year, that is exactly the same amount of time that you have to stay out of the country if you become non-resident. So when you get to the point of thinking, I'm going to be selling my properties off, what you do is go off and become non-residents. Go to somewhere like, take a pick, there's about probably 50 countries that do not charge capital gains tax. You don't have to go to Liechtenstein, you can go to New Zealand, you can go to Panama. I'm not sure about Thailand, that's my fancy, or Vietnam, they all appeal to me. But I doubt they've got capital gains tax. So you become resident of those properties and you avoid paying capital gains tax. How good is that? Fantastic. The other thing is people say, it's all right for you, Jim. You got loads of money. You've got to remember, I started as a college lecturer. I had no money. The reason I was able to buy that property for £35,000, which seems pretty low, little today, was I used credit cards. If you got a good job, you can always get credit. So you can use the credit you achieve for that. Credit cards are a bit dated now for getting hold of properties. I'll explain to you a little trick now, a little later on, how to get properties for nothing. Are we okay? Holding on. However, I'd just like to say, life is not all about making money. At the end of the day, whoever you think, or whatever religion you have, most people believe they're going to meet their maker. And they're going to have to justify their existence in this world. And even if you don't believe in that, you're going to spend your time on this mortal coil. Hopefully, you're going to leave it better than where you started. And you're going to do what you enjoy doing. To me, I like doing property. There's a lot more to property than making money. You're providing low-cost, flexible housing. You're providing a social need. There's a tremendous shortage of housing. You're helping others. You can set the rules for your own property and provide accommodation for those who need accommodation. I know most of you are looking at that dog and thinking, well, how's the dog? Forget the owner of the dog as such, but everyone deserves a house. I would suggest that it is the social duty of those of us who have got nice housing to help those who haven't. And I take that part of my business. I haven't used to beat on about it. It only sort of came to me when I started getting attacked by the local authority and getting told what a rapacious landlord I was. And then look at what they're up to. when they pretend to provide the social, um, provide for the social tenants, I was doing a far better job for the fraction of their cost. Yet they've got the attitude for this. Quite appalling, really. I do things like provide well over and above facilities for my tenants, such like central heating. It's now getting cold, they're all moaning. I provide central heating within my budget, and or shall I say in the rent, so it's included with that. We provide it furnished. If anyone goes without anything, I provide it, so they've got no clothing, or short of clothes. We've got loads of clothes, mainly because my kind of tenants, the DSS unemployed tenants, when they move, they leave the stuff behind. And you'd be amazed how much nearly new or almost new stuff that's picked up. We just store it up, so if you need it, you can have it. Food as well is given. And also, I'm proud to say, I've never evicted a tenant who cannot pay the rent. I haven't found many tenants who haven't been able to pay the rent, by the way. Most of them keep the rent and use it for drug, alcohol, or worse still, cannot be bothered to claim housing benefit. I just find that so annoying that, oh, I can't afford to pay the rent, I've lost my job. Oh, why don't you go and claim housing benefit? Oh, I'm not going to take charity. Oh, I see, but you're claiming job seekers. Of course I am, I'm entitled to it. Strange mentality among some people. Anyway, let's get back to the nuts and bolts. An HMO can, on average, and it varies from different areas, provide 3 times the income for the property. So by taking the property and letting it by the room, where you let it as a whole house, you probably get, say, and I work in weeks, I apologise about that, but that's the way my tenants think, and I've gotten into the habit of thinking that way. You can rent the house for 150 quid. If you rent it by the room, you probably get something like £400 or £500 a week for the same house. So house as a whole house, 150 quid. Let it by the room, make £400 or £500 out of it. How about you say to me, why won't the tenants just think, oh well, that's 5 of us, and we'll club together, and we'll pay 150 quid, and then we'll only pay 30 quid each. I don't know, it's a logical business. I have, over the 20 years I've been running this business, only had about 2 or 3 situations where tenants have got together and said, we ain't going to rent from Jim anymore, we're going to rent a house together and we'll split the bills between us. It just doesn't happen. They just accept me providing it for them. They'd rather do that. I know it doesn't make any sense. This business often doesn't make very much sense. It just works. But anyway, let's go through the figures. Take a property in my area, to keep the figures simple, say we rent it for 100 quid a week. That's 5,200 per annum. There's 52 weeks in the year, the last time I looked at it. So we say there's 52 weeks in the year. Say you had a mortgage of 3,200. That gives you what people often refer to as cash flow. No, there's the difference between the rent and the mortgage, 2,000 quid. Right, let's take that same property and let it as an HMO. Small rooms in this part of the world go for about 65 quid a week. So you've got a 2-bedroom house making you cash flow of £2,000. Turn that 2-bedroom house into 6 rooms. Oh, how do you do that, Jim? You say it's only a 2-bed house. Well, as the actress said to the vicar, come up and see me sometime, darling. Come up and see me, and I'll show you how you can split a property up and turn it into a 2-bedroom house into 6 rooms. Within the law, legally, it's ethically, you're not breaking any law, you're not overcrowding, as they say, you're doing it properly. 6 rooms, 20 grand. So you can see you're getting already 4 times the income. Assuming you've got the same mortgage, then you're getting 17 grand compared to 2 grand. However, there are sometimes bills to pay. If you pay the council tax, that's up here, it's about 1,200 quid on average a year. Water rates, 300 quid, unless it's metered, which is a bit more difficult to assess. Central heating, 1,200 quid a year. As I said to you before, I provide central heating. It's now kicking in now. They're all having we're putting the heating on. The winter's on, and I'll just switch on the heating 24/7 for the next 6 months or more. And if they get hot, the little darlings, they'll open the window to cool down. Electric, 800 quid a year on average. Remember, I've got over 100 HMOs. I analyse the payments, and I find on reasonable use properties, the bills work out around about 800 quid for electric, 1200 for central heating. You want to put broadband in, 300 quid. Add all that together, you're talking about 3,600. So even though you pay the same bills, you're ending up with an income of almost, or cash flow, you want to do it that way, 7 times you would as letting the property as a house. So let it as a house, you can make 7 times the income. That's net income from that property. It's not quite the same thing because you still got voids and bad debts, but you get voids and bad debts with single lets as well. And you can do this for nothing. How can you do it for nothing? We'll go into this a bit more detail, but you use what's called rent to rent. Those posh ones down south call it subletting, apparently. What's a rent to rent? Lease option is very much the same as a rent to rent, except you have the right to buy the property. So you're renting it with a right to buy. What a delayed completion is, you've contracted to buy the property, you've agreed that you can have possession of the property, but you don't complete. In other words, pay the full price for it until sometime in the future, which could be 10 years in the future or 5 years in the future. It's up to you as to what you can decide to do with the owners. The other big advantage of an HMO is the kind of properties which can let as HMOs are often very unattractive families. As I said before, you've got properties with no gardens, ex-commercial properties. I love it now. You can turn offices, shops into residential accommodation, which you can then HMO, let as multi-occupation. An office block would not probably appeal to families, may appeal to investors who turn them into flats, cut the developers out, turn it into an HMO. But I got your interest on that. How did I get most of my HMOs? Well, I've bought most of them. So I did the old way, which was buy a property, I turn it into an HMO, and then revalue on income. Now this is, I mentioned it before, you can value an HMO in 2 ways. One of the ways is to look at it as a bricks and mortar, if it's a house. But if it's a commercial property, or even if it's a house, you can look at its income, and the average is about 10 times income. So you've got a gross rent of 30k, 10 times that is 300,000. You take the gross annual rent and multiply it. In my area it's about 7 or 8 times. For those of you down south, it's going to be 12 or even more times. Before pre-2008, it got to 16 times the gross rent for good quality student housing. I'll repeat that. It got to 16 times the gross rent for good quality student housing. And if anyone wants to bet with me, I think you'll find that will be achieved in probably the next 3 or 4 years. So you'll get back to that kind of multipliers in the business again. It's very much to do with fashion and demand. Now the problem with buying properties is you've got to go through all the palaver and technicality. You've got to find lenders, you've got to pay fees, you've got solicitors, and you've got the risk of losing the property. It's always a bit of stress when you're coming up to buying time, whether you're going to get it. I spent this afternoon trying to make sure that a property I wanted, I got it before it went to auction. So I had to go and spend the best part 2 hours sitting there. They wouldn't even give me a cup of tea, and there I am buying a property for £250,000, and eventually they gave me a cup of tea, but I thought I was pretty poor. But it takes time, it gets stress in doing this. The advantage of buying a property, it's yours until you sell it. Now the other big advantage is if you own the property and you can mortgage it. In the good old days, you used to get mortgages up to 85% of its market value. Now you're talking about 70%. This is how I bought my properties. I'd buy a property, say for argument, for 100k. I'd spend 100,000 turning it into a good quality HMO. It'd value up at say 400,000. If I could borrow 70% on that, that's 280,000. Am I going too fast? I'd buy it for 100. I'd spend 100 on it. That's 200k, and yet lenders would come along and lend me 280. So I got all my money back plus a bit more to go and invest in another property. Hey ho, get a whole load of properties and using other people's money to do it. Remember also, when you cash this money out, it is tax-free, which is lovely. Who wants to pay tax? For those of you who like the idea of buying properties but find it all a bit too complicated, or you're uncertain about how to do it, I'm doing joint ventures. I've stopped buying properties in my own name. I've got too many in my name. I want to share the love, as they say, and buy properties for other people, and of course share the profits. So I can do it all for you. So I will get out, find the property, I'll do the conversion work, I'll help you get the finance, and I'll guarantee that you can get all the money back out of it. So I will, because I know who the banks will lend to, we'll check that you're mortgageable, and I'll guarantee that we'll get all the money back, and properties will be such that we can ensure that they will always pay the mortgage. So I can do it for you. A lot of people do this, what should I say, JVing with me, because it enables them to shadow the process. Others do it because they can't be bothered. They find it a bit too much hard work, just even signing the checks. Whatever your choice, I can get the properties. They will be bought in your sole name. I'm not going to run off the money. You pay for it. We'll then refinance it, get all your money back, and we share the profit. What kind of return are you getting there? Some people find that hard to believe. So you got all my money back. What return am I getting? It's called infinite return, by the way. You'll own the property, so you get the benefit of capital appreciation, plus also a share of the profits. However, we're really talking today about the new way of getting hold of properties. And this is why you'll find me always going to courses, because a lot of these ideas are there, but you just don't recognize them. So if you go on courses like Glenn Armstrong, technically very good, Ben Lepier with his Legal Warriors, very good on motivation, and Simon, he puts them both together. He's technically good and very much into motivation. Will tell you the different strategies you can have. And this is something that after 2008 they brought home to me. You don't need the money to buy properties because you couldn't get finance after 2008. This whole idea of buying property and cashing out just stopped. The wheels came off. So what did I do? I started rent to rent. So what you do is lease the property and you sublet it. It's a lease. So to do it, all you need is an agreement. I use a simple agreement, which I've devised myself. I've stopped using solicitors because I found they get in the way and they screw the deal up. They just took too long to get on and move themselves, and by that time people just lost interest. So now I do my own paperwork to achieve what I want to do, which is acquire properties for nothing. There's very few costs involved. You're not involved in solicitor costs, there's no legal fees, you don't need a deposit. It's a simple way of doing it. So, and the other advantage is you don't own the property. A lot of people are frightened of owning properties, and they make a big play about it, saying you can walk away. You don't own the property, so at the end of the lease, you can return it to the owner, or you could negotiate a further lease on it. I prefer to have a long lease and put a break clause in. If the owner are prepared to accept it, I put a break clause so I can break the contract any time, but they're bound to me for a long-term period of time. So far, it's never happened. I've always managed to keep the properties, make them work. You don't need to be creditworthy. After all, a lot of people have had their credits damaged by late payments and all the rest of it. It's easy to do. All you need is the techniques and skills and knowledge to be able to do this. And one of the questions I get asked about this is, how do you find the properties, Jim? And I can only talk about my experience, and I don't look for properties. I'd say it's the other way around. The properties are always there. I give the analogy of pink cars. Anyone seen a pink car? Well, I guarantee you'll see a pink car in the next week. If you start looking for a pink car, you will spot them. But unless you're looking for them, you won't spot them. The same goes for doing rent to rent. The properties are there. They're all hidden in plain sight. Once you know what you're looking for and you're ready to go, have you got your contract in your back pocket? Have you got your pen? Could you assess a property? then you'll find they will come to you. Discovered. I didn't spend any time looking for the 23 properties that I acquired over a period of time. I just tripped over them. I bet if I went out and looked for them, I'd have a lot more, but I didn't. They were just there to be had. Same way as I find my properties now. I don't put any science into it. Whenever I'm in a position to be able to buy a property, I pick up an auction catalogue. I just open my eyes and see what's for sale. If I'm not interested in buying properties, I do not see the for sale signs. I don't look at the auction catalogues, and someone tells me there's a good deal out there. I don't even bother to get out of bed to have a look at it. I switch on the telly and go back to sleep. So I've got over 20 properties. I bought them. There's a market value of them of over 3 million. I bought them for 300k and not even a penny down. Wow, I didn't even try. I'm not boasting. All I'm trying to do is bring home to you, you can do the same thing. I'm nothing special. After all, I was a college lecturer. How many of you think college lecturers are anything special? No, we all slag them. We're like teachers. People like to knock us. It's not hard to do it, and I assure you, I don't try. This business is the ideal lazy man's way to riches. You just have to put your hand out, and it will be filled with gold. But you just got to put your hand out to do it. So, would you like to see some of the properties I've got for nothing? Can't hear you there. Is that a yes or a no?
Yes or no? Yes.
Good.
Show us the properties.
Show you the properties. There we are. There we are. This is one, nothing to talk about, End Terrace. That's making me 16 grand a year. I got that from a tired landlord. I tend to help out. I believe landlords should stick together. Unfortunately, not many landlords agree with me on that one. So if a landlord phones me up and says, I've got a problem, Jim, I'm there to help if I can. And he said to me, have you got, do you know anyone who's a locksmith? Or have you got any locksmiths working for you? Well, I've got plenty of staff. They're not locksmiths, but they can get into properties without any problems. And while they were breaking into the property, what had happened in this case, the tenants had left and locked the property. He was evicting them, and they didn't even give him the keys back, so he couldn't get into his own property. It's clear they've gone. So while the lads were breaking in, I had a chat with him, and he decided he'd got fed up with tenants. This was the third time he had evicted tenants from this property. When we got inside, it was a state, and he quite happily just handed the keys to me. Nothing down. I got him to sign a contract. He gave me, I think it was a 3 or 6 months rent-free period, and away I went. That's how I got it. Simple as that. Do someone a favour, and away I went. Sorry, it's 2 months rent-free. Forgot that. I usually ask for about 6 months rent-free. And this property is making me 16k. When I say 16k, you take the gross rent, take off the utilities, take off the rent you're paying the owner. That's what you end up with. Here's another one. Picked this up from a chap who was going to become a landlord, but never managed to get the property finished and ready to let. And it's making me 12k. Here's an amazing one, what I call the mega HMOs. An 18-bed HMO. The landlord who took it on bought it, found he couldn't cope with it. It was too far out of his area, and he wasn't used to dealing with DSS tenants. He found them a nightmare. He quite happily handed me the keys in return for me paying the mortgage. Another little property, making about 9 grand. Quite simple deal. There's another one. Again, existing landlord. That's the commonality of this. This landlord had the property. His wife died. Quite sad. So he didn't really want to spend much more time on property. He's happy to get rid of what he could, so and put his efforts into finding love. Very nice thing to do. Here's another one. It's not really worth very much. It's only making about 8k. It's only got 4 existing HMO I took over. Only 4 tenants in it. Right next to a fish and chip shop. Not ideal for owner-occupiers, but my tenants love it because the dining room is next door. Another one, quite amazing. I'm making 12k. This is a 7-bed HMO, but if you look at it, you think, hey ho, is that a TARDIS? Can you get 7 tenants in there legitimately without overcrowding them? Yes, it's quite spacious inside. This is a flat that I took on. It's only a 2-bedroom flat, yet made 9 grand out of it. Here's a big Victorian property. It's got 10 tenants in, making me 24k. Here's another mega HMO, a 4-story building, has 22 tenants or 22 units in it. Again, landlord who's only interested in the commercial aspect of it, that's the shops, not bothered. And I would suggest that mega HMOs are the way to go on this. Look at the figures here. 6-bed HMO, studios, makes you 16k. An 18-bed, well, if you follow the maths, what's 3 times 16? I know it's a bit late, I've been talking a lot. 48,000, but you're making near off 70,000, 68,500. See, the problem is that the bigger you are, the bills don't increase correspondingly. So your utility bills are correspondingly per tenant far less, and also a bigger building, usually is a commercial building, and you get it, the floor space, far cheaper than you would with the house. So you can make far more money with a bigger property. Another one, lovely little terraced house, grossing 15 grand. Here's my favourite, it's an ex-pub. I've only got the upstairs currently used. I'm trying to buy the property off the owner. He's playing hard to get. If I do buy it, I will turn the bottom half into an HMO. It'll cost me 20k, but that will increase the income to nearly 40k. Another mega HMO, again rent to rent. Got this from someone who was again interested in commercial. He's interested in chip shops. He wasn't interested in the rest of the building. Didn't look after it. Treated it appallingly. Typical sort of landlord I don't like. He believed money only goes one way. That is from the tenant to his pocket. He didn't believe in spending a penny on it. So by the time he came to me, it was completely ramshackled, and he had hard job letting it. So there we are. Here's one that I got from Glenn. It's a little terraced house. I never multi-let it. I only bought it because it's an area where I've got an existing HMO, and I've got a tenant there with a lovely tenant. He's brought his family over from Eastern Europe. He couldn't get accommodation anywhere else, and he asked me to find him a house. So I did, and I make a few quid out of it. That's good, isn't it? So what is the trick in all this? What makes it work? That is doing what other people don't want to do. And this is what you'll find throughout the property business. They do not want to manage properties. If you manage properties, it's good fun. You get to meet a lot of different types of people. As long as you treat it as professional, do not get emotionally involved. Yes, you'll get ripped off by the occasional tenant. Yes, they'll trash their properties. It's a small minority. Most of the tenants, over 80%, are lovely people, and they appreciate you doing and looking after them. So, can I tell you about how I can help you do what I've done? Here's a package for you. I've got what's called the business in the bag. That is my manual, how to become a multi-millionaire HMO landlord. You've got the operating standards. You've got all the forms that I use in a manual, plus a CD or a, what do you call it, stick there. So it's all the paperwork you need to run the business. It's called a business in a bag or business in a box. We sell it for £597. I'm also going to run a one-day rent-to-rent course. We show you how to do rent-to-rents, £297. Plus, I'll also give you a 30 minutes follow-up chat on the phone. You can talk to me about what you're doing. If you add all that up, that's over £1,000 worth of products. You get the business in the bag, you get the course, and you get 30 minutes chat with me. And if you think you can keep it to 30 minutes, you're a better person than I can. Total price, about £1,000. But for tonight, and for tonight only, because Duncan said, I've got to give you all a special offer because you've been such a fantastic audience. Here we are. You can have it all for £597 for tonight. No VAT, don't charge VAT. So you want to book tonight. So, great. The rent-to-rent course, by the way, is on the 13th of December. We'll do some in the new year as well. So, to book, just go on my website, www.hmodaddy.com/rent.html. I'll repeat that, just in case you didn't get it, and that is www.hmodaddy.com/rent.html. Right, are we ready for the rent-to-rent date? Is Saturday the 13th of December. But we will do other dates as well. So if you can't do the 13th, I know it's Christmas parties then, we will do another one in January or probably February. So don't worry about that if you can't make the date. But you'll get straight away, once you book on, you'll get the business in the bag. And if you want, you can have your chat with me anytime you want. Great. Here we are. Guarantees, you've got 5-day change your mind, cooling off period. We give you a full money back guarantee if you're not satisfied with the course. We've got loads of testimonials, but most people have been, not most people, not everyone's been on my courses, but anyone who's in the property business knows me and often been on my courses and heard about it. So people know about me. It's gone before me, shall I say. Right, we're going to go on to doing some questions now. Is that right, Duncan? Are you awake, Duncan?
Yeah, no, it is indeed. It is indeed. And I'm just going to actually make it a little bit easier for, in terms of that offer, I'm just going to pop it in, I'm going to do pop it up on people's screen as well, just so you got a little hyperlink, so you can click on it and it can go straight to that page.
Great.
We've got lots of questions that have been coming in all throughout the presentation, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of extra time now just to type in your questions, because we're going to stick around and answer them all. So chuck them in, but we'll get started. What are the best age groups when looking for tenants?
Was that age groups?
Yeah, age groups.
All age groups. Again, it's like location. Put it this way, the most difficult age group to deal with is under 25s. And that tends to be very much across the board. Yeah, I'll have student landlords screaming at me now saying, we love students, they're great. It's more down the social scale. If you've got unemployed under 25s, they can be very difficult to handle. You've got to know what you're doing. The best age group I find, strange enough, are DSS, that's the unemployed. People who have worked most of their lives, they're about 50 or older, and they've been, usually it's a matrimonial breakdown, their wife's had their car, the house, the kids, they're now homeless, and they make my very best tenants, the over 50s. They don't move. A lot of people say, oh, get professionals. The trouble with professionals is they pay the rent themselves, so they can to be quite demanding, which is fair enough, they're paying for it, and two, they move on. While if you get someone over 50 who's DSS, they will stay with you for their lives, and they'll go out in a wooden box. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not looking to make work for myself. If I can let them forget, that's ideal. But you can't generalize with any particular age group. Going back to the young unemployed, because I have to house that type of person, because I've got so many HMOs in my area, we're finding ways of selecting the best ones, and they make very good tenants, but you have to give them a bit of, sort of say, motherly care. You've got to mother them a bit and show them that you're in charge, and they tend to accept that. Once you've got rid of the few headbangers that seem to be around at that age, the rest of them make very good tenants, but you need to manage them. Take no crap off them. Yeah. Shall I read the other question?
Yeah, no, I'm
break
actually.
here?
It's all good, actually. Let me know, guys, if that echoes. I think I got rid of it, so it's all good. Victor says, "Hi, Jim. My name is Victor." Actually, we've done that one, actually. Ken says, "Hi, Jim. I have a 2-story, 3-bedroom house that I would like to use as an HMO. Still need to finalise number of sharers, but expect it to be between 4 to 5. Private sector housing chap has said that although we don't need an HMO license, we need to make an application for change of use. What's your advice, please? Thanks, Ken."
Yeah. I've got some good friends in the private sector housing, but I sometimes wonder what kind of training they've had. They may know about what they're talking about, but they don't know about planning law or many other areas. Sometimes they don't even know about housing standards either. You have to educate a few of them. You don't need, unless it's one of the restricted areas where they have what's called Article 4 directive, and there's not many, it's less than 5% of the country, which says that you cannot have a shared house without planning permission. In other words, any property with more than 3 tenants needs planning. If you're outside that area, there's no Article 4. The law has changed since 2010, so you may not be aware of it. You don't need planning permission for up to 6 sharers. And the actual change in the law, it's called permitted development. So just phone up your local planning department and check that. Is this an Article 4 area? Or talk to a landlord association. It's worth paying the 70 quid to join a local landlord association, and they will tell you whether an Article 4 applies. Up to 6, you've got no problem. Strange enough, the law doesn't say that above 6 needs planning permission either. That's a much more complicated area. They'd have to show, if they demanded you had planning permission, that say 7 or 8 was going to cause a significant change in the usage of the property. But a 2 or 3 bedroom house, up to 6, in 95% of the country, is not a problem. Next question. I like George.
I will just jump in. Thanks, George. Then George, Tanya says, actually, here's a good one from Saritha. Jim, what's your view on lease options for only 1 year? Is that a big no-go, or in the right circumstance, do you think that's acceptable?
It wouldn't appeal to me, a lease option for a year. For me, I take a property, and ideally, I'd like to be able to have it for life, a bit like a dog. I just don't generally do rent-to-rent, so I like lease options, which is a rent-to-rent with a right to buy it. I want at least 120 months, but it's your attitude to risk. I met plenty of people in this business who boast about they've only got a year or 2 or 3 year contracts, so they're not bound to keep the property. As far as I'm concerned, if it works for 1 year, it'll work for 10 years, so why on earth would you only want it for a year? But if that's all you can get, it gives you the experience. People have to make do with what they've got, and if you're in, say, London area, if you can get your hands on a property and make it work, in other words, do the figures on it, and it works, even if it's for a year. It's a bit like some of my girlfriends. A year would have been great. Unfortunately, they left me next morning.
That actually ties in. You mentioned London. That ties into a question I saw earlier, which actually mentioned, like, does this strategy, can you apply this to London?
Yes, you can. In fact, this is where it started. Except they called it their own name. They called it subletting. That was massive in London back in 2000. I heard about it, but I was too busy buying properties. I couldn't see why on earth I'd want to sublet a property when I could go out and buy it. But subletting was a big thing in London, but the figures are wafer thin compared to what I do up here. I really am living the dream up here, because the difference in profit I can make on a property. 1, we can buy it for. 2, the returns. In London, the rents for single lets are so high, and the rent you can get for rooms is so low compared to up here. It's hard to make it work. You've got to be very careful with the figures. But yes, people do, and they boast about making, say, £200 or £300 a month out of subletting. But all you have to do is have 1 tenant void, and you've lost your profit. You're actually putting money in your pocket. Well, with me, I usually can afford to run with 1 tenant missing and not lose money. Sometimes 2 or 3 tenants missing and not lose money. I won't be making very much money, and that doesn't make me very happy, but I can manage with that level because I've got so much more margin of safety in what I do. But the big difference between me and London is demand is so hotter there that you can be far more selective and very quickly fill your properties. So we all have our crosses to bear, put it that way. I look enviously at London, London's look envious at me. I wish I'd started in the southeast, because capital appreciation, that's there, and that is something you do without having to do any work, so it's massive return. So I wish I got into London many years ago, and each time I look at it I think, oh, it's far too expensive, as to where I am now. A long answer to a question, sorry.
No, that's great, thank you. And you mentioned that you kind of do a lot of the legals, or you're kind of avoiding lawyers, but so what kind of contracts are you using for your HMO properties?
If you get the business in the bag, you get the contract, and it's given without liability. It's no secret. All we do is just look at what other people have done and adapt it. I wouldn't say copy it, because you get breach of copyright there, but it's a contract. It's in writing. At the end of the day, people say, is it watertight? Do I care? Do I look like I care? As they say, am I bothered? Because if you're going to go to court, you're going to be stupid if you go to court over a contract. Yeah, you got a property, it's making you 12 grand. Are you going to risk fighting an action in court, which could end up costing you 100 grand to save 12 grand's income? You've got to be daft in the head. You just gracefully give in. Fight all the way. If the owner's going to push it to the courts, you just hand it back and say, thanks very much. Again, it's just like love. Enjoy it while you got it, but let it go when it's no longer working.
Fantastic, thank you. Tanya said, earlier on, Jim, you mentioned that 5 properties could get you 5 grand, and then you then said if you set it up right. What kind of rules were you referring to by setting it up? When you said setting it up right, what kind of stuff? So I mean, are there? I mean, is this things that are mentioned in your business in a bag, or are there a couple of things which have to be set up right every time, or is it just knowing the procedure, like from A to B, like your checklist, or what exactly do you mean by setting up right?
What you need is one of these. It's called a calculator, and you need to do the maths on it. That's what I mean setting up right. How much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost to adapt? How much rent you're going to get from the property? And you do your maths on that. Yes, you can get some properties that are never going to work because they're just too small. You need one that gives you, usually in my area, it's 5. There you are. See your hand? That's it. When you go home tonight, I assume you're at home, that's what your right hand's for. 5 tenants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives you the general mass in this area. But every area is different. The first 2 tenants pay the rent. The third one pays the utilities. The fourth one covers your voids and bad debts. The fifth one is your profit. That's why I like 6 tenants. What's the 6th tenant? Even more profit. Or if you like a bit more, you're motivated. Some people call them greedy. I'm never sure what the difference is between being motivated and being greedy. You get 3 more. You get profit from 3 tenants. You get 8 tenants. It costs the same. And a lot of people find this very hard to understand. It costs the same to run a property with 4 people in as it does with 8. In fact, it costs slightly less. The heating bills with 8 people in the property, and I'm not talking about overcrowding it, is less. It's actually a very simple explanation for that, if you're interested. Everyone gives off 2 watts of electricity, the equivalent to a 100-watt bulb. So each person gives off 200 watts of electric. Or maybe even more if you get up to various things. So if you've got 8 people on the property, you're giving off the equivalent of a 2 kilowatt heater. So that's why it's cheaper to heat the property, because you know the tenants themselves are warming it up. It's quite a strange thing. Everyone thinks, it's going to cost more to have more people there, use more electric. They don't. You use, I find, less. Next question.
Next question, echo off. This is a little balancing act. Tell me if it's still good, guys. Hi, Jim. One question that actually keeps on repeating quite a lot. Where do you find these HMOs? How do you source all these deals, these properties?
Right. It's a question I get asked an awful lot of times. I don't find them. They come to me. I am a HMO magnet. I wish I was a babe magnet, but I just make do with being an HMO magnet. They're there. You just open your eyes and look for them. They're hidden, as I say, in plain sight. You don't have to look hard for them. Whenever I want a property, I think, I've got a bit of space here, I've got some money in my bank account, I've got some money on my credit cards, I can afford to buy a property. I open my eyes, I look for the for sale signs. I look at the properties that look empty. And I go and ask the neighbours, who owns this property? Do they want to sell it? I pick up an auction catalogue and have a flick through it. I occasionally look in estate agent windows, but I don't like estate agents. Nothing wrong with estate agents. I met some lovely people who are estate agents, but I'd rather not bother with them. There's just there. You just don't have to. You just need to know what to look for, and also, are you ready to do the deal? So if you're talking about rent to rents, if someone came up to you and said, I've got this property, I can't afford the mortgage, could you then know how to assess it and say yes? Most people, when faced with it, it's as I say, it's right in their face, would run a mile because they're frightened to take it on. They don't know what they're doing. So one of the things you can learn from the business in the bag, and you come on the rent-to-rent course, we're going to do a simulation. Are you going to have this deal? And whenever I've done it, guess what? I'm the only one who'll take the deal. I go around the audience and say, here's a deal. I've even taken people on the courses because I've been offered a deal on the day, and people look at it and go, oh yeah, but you might not be able to do it, you might not be able to do it. That's why I said what you need in this business is balls, probably a bit of recklessness, insanity, some people refer to it as. Just got to get out and do it and solve the consequences. But you do the maths first. Check it out. Get one of these. It's called a calculator. And do the maths, and the rest of it falls into place. It's nothing hard about it. Just go on and do it.
I think that's an interesting. I quite like your little warning at the beginning about that you're not exactly known for being PC, but often people too much what's it called? Like when you analyze like power.
Yeah, analyze the power. What is it? Come on, help that.
Analysis paralysis.
That's it. You got it.
I'm dyslexic. It's all coming out wrong.
Have another scotch. Join me.
That's great. Thanks for that. Ken asks, what's the best way? Is there sort of like some sort of website or something to find out sort of the going rate for rooms in any given area, or is it literally just your ear to the ground and you just basically you kind of find it out pretty soon if you pick your little area? Or is there like some way to work out what is the standard price which you're meant to be charging for rooms, or do you just play it by ear?
Right. It's so much simpler. I'm envious of all you out there. Not only has the law changed in 2010, which allows you to have up to 6 sharing without planning permission. When I did most of my HMOs, it was a grey area whether you needed planning permission. So every HMO I set up, I was always worried the planning officer would be coming down and having a go at me. And so now you can go on Spare Room and name a few others, Gumtree and all the rest of it. You can go through, you can see the properties that your competition are offering, what they're charging for it, so you can see what the rents are being charged. You can also go, and this is the bottom end of the market, go onto the local authority website for housing benefit. That's the rate they pay for a room for housing benefit tenants. So this area, you get 60 quid. In London, it's about £100 is what they pay for housing benefit. You can also subscribe to an excellent magazine, Ant Lyons, Your Dinner's on You, called Your Property Network, YPN. And on the back of that, they go through the whole of the country and they give you the average rents. All they've done is analyse the Spare Room and that type of thing, showing you the average rent for the area and also the demand. I'm quite surprised because when we looked at it from my area, I discovered it in the magazine a couple of months ago, it seems to be I'm undercharging. And I thought I was pushing the boat out. I'd charged as much as the market could bear. But apparently, according to the average figures there, I'm slightly under on some of my rents. So the information's there. Everyone moans about whatever you pay. Even if you gave it away, people will complain about it. And one of the problems I have, remember I said I give central heating, it's all part of the rent. I get more complaints on my central heating than anything else. I've got 1 or 2 properties, not many, where you don't have central heating. They have to pay for their own heating. And guess what? I get no complaints about it. And I'm giving away the heating for free. I charge the same rents, by the way, for the properties without central heating as I do with central heating. There's a mug there, if you think that one through. But I don't get any complaints about heating. And I still get the same rent and more profit because I'm not paying 1,200 quid a year for central heating. Weird world. Don't try and make any logic out of it.
One thing I know that you're known for, Jim, is
actually you're very good at being able to see a property and being able to see when you walk through, and actually in terms of actually the layout, actually being able to squeeze, the optimum amount of space out of it. And you can obviously for experience, you can see things that people just starting out can't. But how do you create so many bedrooms in, say, for example, just a normal two-bedroom house? I mean, I thought this is from Simon. I thought building regulations meant that bedrooms and living rooms all needed natural light. Is this just through like, yeah? What's your tactics?
Right. Simon's absolutely right. Bedrooms need natural light. It costs about 300 or 400 quid to put an extra window in. You can split rooms up. The minimum size for a room is 65 square feet, or 6.5 square meters. 65 square feet. Not probably the size of bedroom I want to live in, but I was in the Merchant Navy for many years, and that would be quite a generous sized cabin. A lot of my tenants spend time with me and also spend time with Her Majesty's pleasure. In other words, they say they go on holiday, but it's a few months they spend in prison. The average size of a prison cell is 32 square feet, or 3.2 square meters, and they're locked up for 23 hours. With my properties, they can come and go as they want. They're not forced to stay there. For where there's high demand for properties, or they can't afford any more, 65 square foot is the approach. So if you take a two-bedroom house, you can quite easily turn the two bedrooms into 4 bedrooms, still within minimum sizes. And then you've got the downstairs lounge. You can turn into bedrooms, so it's easy to get the 6 rooms, but you just appreciate that you're splitting the rooms. But you're right, you need to have building control approval to do that, putting windows in and splitting rooms and any other structural alterations you make to the property. But unless you're significantly over 6, you generally don't need planning permission. But you do need to comply with the requirements, the law relating to what you need to do to an HMO. And as I said earlier, those who are still listening, there are about 14 things you have to do to a property to keep it compliant as an HMO. It's going to cost you probably the best part of $5,000 to do it. Most of it's relating to fire safety. May not, depending on your local authority, it varies. There's 340 different local authorities in the country, and they all vary tremendously as to what they require. Some are very strict. In my area, they are very strict, and they're very proud to be strict. I used to criticize them about that, and they think that's actually a compliment. It shows how some local authorities look upon it. When I say they're over the top on standards, they think that's a compliment. But you know what it is, you do it. That's the nature of the business, and you don't get too much hassle from your local authority.
Fantastic. A couple of people just asked whether it would be possible just to put up the slide with the link again.
Yes.
So, Mandy,
I don't know how I get it up. Mandy, you're going to get my slide back up again. I've got my technical support here. Very good.
And while we're doing that, Jim, what do you? Obviously, you've been working in your sort of area for a long time, but are there, like, when picking an area for the first time, are there things to be mindful of, and in particular that you're looking out for? So, for example, transport links, or is it close to universities, or what kind of things do you look out for when picking, like, an area?
Well, remember what I said before, everything lets. I won't use the analogy I used earlier today about that one, but everything seems to let. I've never found a property I could not let. What I look out for, by the way, is what the neighbours are. I think you've got to be very careful. I wouldn't want to live next to an HMO, and I'm sure most of my listeners wouldn't. So if I go down and it's an owner-occupier area, each side you can see are owner-occupiers, I will not buy that property. So I don't even get out the car, except nowadays I'm even lazy. I get someone to get me a street map and we just have a look at the street and see what it's like. I want properties that are away from anyone else, may go for semis, provided the neighbours are not too house proud, probably tenants themselves. That's the kind of thing I look for. I'm just interested in a low-cost property because I can maximize my income. It's not I want a low-cost property, it's the fact that why spend more when you can spend less? I don't care whether the property is in a terrible state. Fire damaged properties, people say, oh, it's going to cost you a lot to renovate that, Jim. No, it's not. I'm going to strip it out anyway. Have you ever stripped a property out? You go back to brick, you knock a few of the walls down anyway. It's got a hole in the roof. What's it cost to fix a small hole in the roof? If it's totally burnt out, yeah, that's a slightly different. But it's slightly fire damaged. They've done part of the job for me in renovating it. They're the kind of property. It's space that I want. I'm not looking for a pretty house. I'm not looking for a parking space because my tenants don't have cars on the average. It's 1 in 6 tenants have cars. I find with my property, I've got a property with 12 people in it. There are less cars outside those properties than there are down the street because they're big properties and they probably have 4 or 5 cars because the family has cars for that. It doesn't need that type of thing. It's supplying what your tenants want and what I'm prepared to pay for. So not a problem.
Perfect, thank you. Now I know that you've obviously got you've got it all systemized and you've got a managing company who runs, because you've obviously got over 100. If somebody is just looking to get into the game and they're starting out and they want to manage them themselves, how many HMOs would you say is comfortable?
Good question. And I ponder with the answer. I think you can manage, well, put it this way. I come across a lot of landlords who stop at 20. It's 10 or 20 seems to be the limit. They get as far as 20 and they stop. Could they manage more? I don't know. I managed 20 HMOs, 18 single lets, had a full-time job and ran a business. I had more time than I have now. What I would suggest to everyone is unless you love employees, I can love my tenants. My employees I pay to do a job, that's a different story. Managing people is the most difficult part of this whole business. And if you got that right, you'll rule the world. Managing tenants, tenants are tenants. They do what they do. Local authorities, they irritate me. Acquiring properties, I can do that all day, any day. I could do half a dozen properties a day. Acquiring the property is shelling peas to me. But the big difficulty is once you get beyond probably, I probably could manage 50 properties myself, 50 HMOs. I'm not saying I do all the work. I'd employ cleaners, employ decorators, I employ maintenance people, but I would manage the whole thing myself. Probably about 50 would be the max I think I could manage by myself. But I'm me, and people's ability to manage, cope, and deal with things are totally different. Up until round about 2006, and I had about 70 properties, I did all the call-outs. Everyone went home at 4 o'clock, went off to bed or went down the pub. I would do all the call-outs, and I managed them. I had to get called out in the middle of the night. If I had a drink, which is very rare, by the way, I just call out a taxi, and they'd come along and take me out. I'd probably go out in my dressing gown and slippers and go and sort the problem out, get back in the taxi, get back into bed. I wouldn't even remember it. When I got staff to do it, they'd come in ranting and raving that they got woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they had to go and let some drunken fool in who had lost his keys. I probably didn't even wake up. It's your attitude, how to deal with people, manage them, don't take any crap off them, but be respectful to them, look after them. They will respect you as long as you respect them and you are looking out for their best interest. It's not a hard business, but you are dealing with people, and people are people, and they are your tenants.
Fantastic, thank you.
That's late at night.
Louise asked, and actually we've got a few comments like this. Would you mind just reiterating and just actually telling us exactly what is involved and what we'll get in that business in a box? And you mentioned legal contracts, but can you just just tell us in a bit more detail what is actually in that offer?
It's very simple. It's everything you need to know to be able to run an HMO. It's my manual, which took me, I'm still writing it, took me many years to write, how to become a multimillionaire HMO landlord. You got all that information there. It goes through all the information you need to assessing properties, getting finance, and all the other technical detail. You've got operating standards. The operating standards tell you how to run your business. So how do you select tenants? How do you move them in? How do you evict them? How do you deal with tenant complaints? Even better, for those of you who want to do housing benefit tenants, there's a whole chapter there on how to manage housing benefit. How do you convert properties? What standards do you have to make sure you don't get problems in the future? It's all in the operating standards. It tells you exactly how to go about running the business. And then you've got the forms, agreements, and letters. That's the forms, agreements, and letters I've used over the years. I've copied them. They're there. They're also on a CD or a stick where you can use them. They're being depersonalized. All you have to do is tap your name and address on the top, which you can add automatically, and just put the tenant's name and address or whoever else it's supposed to be relevant to, plus the rent-to-rent contract, the tenancy agreements I use. It's a 14-page tenancy agreement. It's quite impressive. It's covered every problem I've had over the years. So you imagine you've been doing it for 20 years, and you suddenly think, oh, I haven't covered that in the agreement. I haven't covered that. So over 20 years, I've covered every situation that's arisen, and it's there. It's clear. Tenants sign 14 pages to say they've agreed to this, this, and this. I can go through in great detail. You could actually make a whole webinar on my tenancy agreements because every problem you have, you change it. So I've had all the kickbacks. As they say, this business is a bit like dog law. With a dog, you don't give them a set of rules when they move into the house. They come in as a lovely puppy, give them a kiss, and then you tell them off and they get it wrong. I've done all the telling off. You've got it already there as a set of agreements for you. What else is there? You've got the operating standards. You've got the I'm losing the will to live here. What else is there? You've got the forms, the forms. I've talked about the forms. You've got the operating standards. You've got the thing, and also you've got the DIY eviction, which is how you evict tenants legally, simply. That is an ABCD approach to evicting tenants through the court system. Having done 300 evictions, I've just simplified it. It is no law in it. It's just here. This is what works. I've done 300 evictions with 100% success rate. I don't think anyone, even solicitors, could boast that kind of rate. Every time I've gone to court, I've evicted the tenants. By the way, occasionally I've forgotten to go to court. It doesn't work if you don't go to court. But if you go to court, you turn up, you've done the forms right, it works.
So as long as you turn up, it works. That's the one small print, fine print. I like that. Hillary asks, does turning offices and shops into HMOs present big problems?
Well, depends what you mean by problems. Life has problems. It's rained today. You have issues. The problems are very much down to how you react to them. You have permitted development with offices and shops. Provided you follow the proper procedure, you don't have a problem. But there are a few wrinkles you need to watch out for, where you can get yourself into problems. And that's what I say. We deal with that on the rent-to-rent course. Again, it's almost a few hours by itself. But it's amazing. The government are sitting there screaming at local authorities saying, get your hands off your neck of the housing supply neck and allow people to provide accommodation, which we desperately need. Local authorities are my friends. I love them because they're stopping the supply of accommodation. Planning stops people providing accommodation. All this restrictions provides stops people having turning properties, empty properties, into good use. You take an empty property, you just go up and say, I'm going to turn this into an HMO. You'll have the half the local authorities enforcement team steaming up to the property. They won't come there and say, hang on, we'll give you a hand and we'll show you how to do it. They'll say, you can't do this, you've just got to stop it, and all the rest of it. They are so negative. So you've got to know the rules. You've got to know what to do. You've got to know what you can get away with and know what you can't get away with. And I'll show you how to do it.
Fantastic. This is a good one. Would a conversion from house to studios with own cooking and washing facilities require planning permission, building regs, approval, and sound insulation acoustics? Many thanks. Winky face. You also got
You're setting me traps, aren't you? It's slowly you skin a cat. Do it the right way, and you can do it. So, no, you can't do it without planning permission, but there's ways of doing it. Come and see me sometime.
That actually ties in nicely. There's actually quite a few questions. I know you mentioned it briefly earlier, but regarding planning permissions from 2 beds up to 6 beds, I mean, planning permission, is it a big stumbling block, or is it you just got to go about it the right way?
No, there's no problem. You can have up to 6 sharing. There's nothing really you can do about it, unless you're in an Article 4 area. But remember, you've got to comply with the 14 points you need to do with an HMO. You bet when you've done the all 14, some local authority official will come up and say you've got to do this and that. But that's the nature of the business. There's a bit of a dilemma in this. I always say to people, phone up your local authority, get the measure of them. If they are positive towards providing HMOs, in other words, they seem to be on your side, embrace it. Because most people who work for local authorities look upon it as their social duty to help people. There's a few little people who have a different approach to the business, but most of them are there to help. And if you go there, they will hold your hand and walk you through it. You don't even have to come and see me. They will tell you how to do it. And you just do what they tell you to do. As long as you don't want to question why and how, just do what they tell you, and you won't have a problem. However, if you get ones who go over the top, you've got to know how far they can push you legitimately. And sometimes you get local authorities who are asking for things they've got no right to ask for, they've got no power to do so. And that's the balance. I mentor a lot of people, and some have this view that they want to be open and above board, so they go to the local authority. Then it makes the job twice as hard, because the local authority come down and say, you've got to do this, this, and this. And I spend hours having to unwind that and saying, you don't need to do it. And it causes problems. Well, if you've done it and just do what you think you should do, it doesn't really cause that much of a problem.
Fantastic. How are you doing, Jim? We've still got a few more questions. Is that okay?
I'm fine. We're great. All my mentees are sitting here saying we want to go off for a curry, but I'm here for you. Don't worry. We'll just pick it up the curry house in a minute. In fact, if they want to go and get the curry in. I always have the same each time. You know what I want. You get it in, and I'll be down.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. It's fantastic. Here's a question about: is there a minimum ratio of bathrooms to bedrooms?
What's your right hand for? 1 to 5 again. Bathrooms 1 to 5. Kitchens 1 to 5. If you have 6, you have to have 2 bathrooms. But remember, a bathroom, people think as a bathroom is a big place. It doesn't have to be. You just need a WC, which could be stick it any under stairs cupboard, little space here, there, and anywhere, as long as you get the drainage right, and a shower. That's it. If you have a WC, you need a hand basin in it, and a shower. You can get a shower in quite a small space. You've got your 2 bathrooms. Kitchens are easier to get round. Most local authorities will accept that you don't need 2 kitchens. What you need is 2 sets of facilities, and they will count a cooker and a microwave as suitable for up to 10 people. You don't need to get 2 sinks. They'll accept a sink and a dishwasher. suitable. The daft thing about all this is very few of your tenants, if they are British, cook. People from overseas are totally different. They do a lot of cooking, and you need to provide those facilities. But in some ways, there are big advantages in housing overseas tenants. So provide what they want. It's what the tenant wants. You're in a business of providing what tenants want, but at the same time, you've got to keep the local authorities at bay and keep them happy as well. But the main thing you've got to look for is your tenants. They are the source of your income. You want to keep them.
Fantastic, thank you. Just a quick technical one. George is really keen to ask about the heating. You mentioned you do some heating in your properties. Do you have a thermostat? He's heard about a tamper-proof thermostat. Can you recommend any in particular?
No. Tamper-proof thermostats, a pickaxe. All they needs a pickaxe. They just smash it off. It's a waste of space. Just turn the heating, put the heating on, leave it running, and take it. They'll just run it full blast and accept it as it is. Or don't bother with central heating. I'm Scots and I'm anal. We're tight. We're proud about being tight. But I've long since learnt the lesson. Just turn the heating on and forget about it till next June.
Fantastic. Michael Fraser says, I'm not a homeowner, but currently earn over 20,000 per year, 25,000 per year, and am meeting lots of exclusions regarding obtaining a mortgage in the first instance. Do you have? I mean, I know there's all this new mortgage market review coming in. Like, have you got any advice on how we can overcome this?
Yes, Michael. Playing the paddling pool with buy-to-let mortgages. Step up and go for commercial mortgages. You could be unemployed. They look upon you as a commercial. Are you running a business? And if you want to learn how to do it, join me as a mentee, and you'll get the business experience to be able to get commercial mortgages, and the world's your oyster. And 25k is what you'll make in a week doing a deal.
Fantastic. Guys, we're gonna start to wrap up quite soon, so get your last questions in. I think one or two along the way might have been missed, so I apologise if yours has been missed, and maybe just resend it in. Hillary goes, I've been on a couple of courses and many meetings. Rent to rent has usually been suggested by letting agents, which I don't really like the sound of. Are there plenty of other ways to find properties?
I'm not sure I understood that question. She's been to plenty of meetings, and they suggest she use letting agents or letting agents.
Yeah, I was a bit confused. I think she's been on a lot of courses, and the idea of sourcing properties through letting agencies as a means for doing rent to rent, I think that's what she's been suggested lots. I mean, are there lots of other ways? I mean, I know there are.
Yeah, I don't use letting agents or estate agents. Nothing wrong with them. I've got some good friends who are letting agents and the rest. But if you want to get properties, just keep your eyes open. There's plenty of opportunities out there. Go to meetings where landlords go, and if you go to a meeting with landlords, you'll find the landlord bitching about, oh, I've got this and that, and then that's your opportunity. As long as you know what you want. And the problem is, people say, oh, how do I find a property? I say, what do you want? They go, I don't know. Well, how are you going to find it? I mean, it's a bit like saying, I want to go out for a date. I'll say, what do you want? Well, I don't know. What do you want? A woman? Do you want a dog? Do you want a cow? Do you want a male? If you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find anything. And that's really what it comes down to in this business. You've got to know what you want. And once you know what you want, you will find it. It's there. I don't have any problems finding properties. And I've done it with other people, and it's always the part they do not know what they want. Once you know what you want, you'll find it. It's there.
Fantastic. Jay says, I have £70,000 in equity and would like to replace a £30,000 a year salary. Can you help?
Wow, I'm not quite sure.
So he's got £70,000 in equity to play with, and he's looking to replace a 30 grand a year salary.
Of course I can help. That's what we've been talking about. You don't even need that. All you need, as I keep saying to you, is the willingness to do it. Have a spirit of taking an attitude to risk and change your life, and you will succeed in this. So equity and 30k. In fact, that gets in the way because you've got something to lose. If you come to me with nothing, you can walk out with something. If you come with me with something, you'll probably worry about keeping that little something instead of getting out there and playing the game. You've got to risk all to achieve all.
I like it. This is I quite like this advice. It's not what you'd often hear. You know, it's quite refreshing. Bit of an odd question from not sure who this one's from. Is heating required in shared areas like corridors?
Oh, that sounds like a housing standards officer coming out with these awkward little questions. Yeah, I bet that is one of our housing standards officers. Hello, Roy. Are you there? Are you listening? Yes, is the answer. How do you get around it? Come and see me sometime.
Perfect. Thank you. That's mentorship. Talking about. I think we're getting there, guys. I'll give you 30 more seconds or 45 more seconds to get your last year questions in. I feel like we put you through your paces. We've been going on for almost coming up to like an hour and 45 minutes.
My pleasure. I love people that are interested in knowing about the business.
The questions have been firing in non-stop. So that's fantastic. Here's a quick message from. It's not a question, but it's from George. Hi Duncan, I can listen to Jim all night. He's my hero. From Georgia, sorry. So you've got a hero, and there's actually there was another one here from Craig saying about what you're talking earlier. I know a very nice lady for you, Jim. She's in her 40s. This is not a joke either. I'll set it up. So you've got a hero and you've got a date. It's been a good evening.
Thank you. I don't think my partner will be too happy about that one.
Okay, forget about that. We'll chat that. You don't have a date. Sorry, Craig.
Well, let's hear about your heating, though. Why do you need to look at this date, and she'll provide your heating for you?
Fantastic. I think there's a couple more like just private messages which I can email to you privately, but. Suan asks, when is the last time I can book the course? When is this going to be open for? Maybe like 24 hours or?
I don't know what the rules are. Is it 24 hours? 48 hours you've got. My assistant said 48 hours to book. But don't hang about because you're either going to do it or you don't. It's like property. You've got to be able to make that decision within seconds. Otherwise you lose it. It's instant. Most of the deals I've had where I've acquired properties, you've got to be there and make the decision there and then. That's what makes it. If people go away and think about it, they change their mind, and that's why I'm not knocking solicitors. They do a fantastic job, one or two of them. But the difficulty is it gets in the way. After people think about things for months, they get cold shoulders, cold feet, and don't go ahead. You've got to learn to know what you want, and as soon as you see it, go for it.
Fantastic. And then we got a couple of nice comments coming in. So just while I wrap up and I read that, do you want to put on that link just one last time for the people who are interested in taking it?
Sure. We'll put the link back on for you. Fantastic deal. You've got over £1,000 worth of products. And it's only 297. Is it? How much is it? £597. Yes, it's £597. And by the way, you can bring a partner for 50%. So your partner can come along. We didn't mention that. Your partner that comes along for 50% of the total price. There. You don't both get the business in the bag, but I'm sure you can manage to read those yourself. But the partner comes for what's half of that? Yeah.
I was going to say you don't always see those. Well, as in you rarely see those type of guarantees as well, because obviously you bring your money where your mouth is, and you've got a guarantee there to support that. So I think what's interesting is that you've been investing since 1991, I believe. What, that's 23 years, and you've seen recessions, you've seen booms, you've seen busts, you've kind of seen it all. And obviously, you know, so I think I can safely say, guys, for people who are maybe on the fence, that, you know, there's a lot of people on the market, people coming, people go, a lot of these guys, but Jim's kind of seen it all. So if you're looking to sort of invest in a mentor, then I think Jim is a really solid bet, you know. So I highly recommend people who are just on the fence to trust in Jim. And yeah, we got a couple more just comments being like, thank you so much, great webinar, Jim. Thanks, Duncan and Jim. Really interesting webinar. Thanks for answering all my questions. Louise, thanks, Jim. I learned so much. Oh, we got a few more hero talks. You're lots of people's hero, it looks like. Thank you, Jim. I'm just going to wrap up now and say we'll leave that link up, and I'll leave it up for a while, even after we leave. But Jim, thank you so much for taking the time out. As I mentioned at the beginning, like, you've been investing for years, but one of your passions is teaching other people and lecturing and teaching other people to sort of like follow in your footsteps. And you've been so generous with your time for, you know, over the last almost coming up to 2 hours. You just, you know, just imparting all your knowledge. So from myself and from like all of our community, thank you so much, and we really appreciate it. It's absolutely fantastic to have you here. And to everyone on the call, thank you for asking such fantastic questions. You've been so engaged as always, and it's brilliant. It's really great to see all these great questions coming from all different levels of experience, and we put these events on for you guys. So thanks for turning up, and we really appreciate it. Do you have any last words from you?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been great. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks, Duncan, for putting on this webinar. It's been a great pleasure, and it's been fantastic participation from the people in the audience. So thank you very much for attending, and thanks for the questions, and I hope to see you. Come up and see me sometime. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Actually, and just as we go, actually, a couple more really nice comments come in, so I'll just read them to you. Thanks so much, Jim, from Surin again. Brilliant with 3 hours webinar. I missed the beginning. We'll have to listen to it again tomorrow. From Jay, thank you so much. Please call me. He's given his number. So I don't know if that's about property or that's another day. We'll have to wait and see. Rich, brilliant webinar. Saw you at PPN Mopsy in London this weekend. We'll be signing up soon. Thank you, Rich. And God, they're all coming in. So once again, thanks, guys. Thanks, Jim. And we'll see you next time. See you soon, guys.
Thanks, Duncan.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Well done.